Shalom to Sergeant Corey Bronson.
Hi Yoni, how are you today?
Great, Baruch Hashem. So let's start from the beginning. How did you get from where you were born until here? The IDF were here, behind you a tank. Tell us about the story of your life.
I was born in the United States, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. There I grew up with my mother and my two brothers and father. My father was not Jewish, my mother is, so of course we are also. At the age of 6, my father passed away from cancer, and in spite of his death, we continued to live accordingly to the lifestyle of a Christian lifestyle.
Churches and everything?
Churches, everything. Every Sunday, Sunday school,
And did you know that you were Jewish?
I did not know I was Jewish. I learned I was Jewish a year after my father's death. My uncle came to visit us in Philadelphia at my mother's home, and he came. It was a Friday afternoon, Erev Shabbat, and he was wearing a black suit, black hat, and I, in all my ignorance, I said, "Hey, man, it's Friday." Church is on Sunday. And he looks at me and goes, "You have a lot to learn, buddy. It's Erev Shabbat today." And I didn't know what Shabbat was. I didn't know I was Jewish. And he tells me, he goes, "I can see I kind of lost you here. Shabbat is," he began to explain to me the inyan of Shabbat and its importance. And I still didn't catch on to it. I was only 7 years old. It was way over my head. So he goes, "Go pack your bags. Tell your brother to pack his bags." It was the best way I can see to explain this to you is simply to show you. And we packed our bags, and then and there we had our first Shabbat and our last Shabbat for a long time.
So you went to churches, then found out that you were Jewish, but that wasn't enough. Then came Islam.
Yes. So after we had this Shabbat, I knew I was Jewish, and the knowledge was with me. I didn't know any meaning to it. I didn't have any importance or anything. So we continued a Christian lifestyle, and about the age of 11, 12, my mother met a friend from her childhood who is Muslim, and fell in love, got married, you know, the happily ever after. And upon his request and my mother's request, everyone converted to Islam.
How did you see it then, the moving between religions?
Still, I had insight, we'll say. I wasn't completely ignorant at this age, but it was, I just went with the flow. The most important thing to know is honor thy father and thy mother, and that's a statement that goes through all the religions that I passed through, and it was my mother's wish, and I saw that this was making her happy, and I went with it. And we became Muslim. We began learning. We began learning how to read, how to write, the prayers 5 times a day, the food to the standards that they requested, food in the home, and we did this full out. My mother began covering her hair, everything. And at that time, through all this, I did it, and I feel also in Christianity, I went through with these things, and I practiced both religions full out, but I felt that something was missing. I felt that I was lacking something, and I didn't know what. And I looked, I learned about different cultures, I learned different religions. I didn't practice, but I learned them in a time that I was still Muslim. And in the end of all things, I was reminded in my learnings through Islam, because we came across certain things that it spoke about Judaism.
Like what?
Kashrut, for the food. What makes food kosher? And there was a statement that said if you cannot find food that's kosher to the standard of Islam, that it's okay to eat the food of the Jews according to their standard, because their standard is also sufficient.
So you said, "Hey, that's me."
And I was reminded, and I said, "Hey, I'm Jewish. That's nice." And I thought to myself, kind of all like a flash thought. I said, "Hey, I didn't really learn about that." I mean, through all these things, I've been learning all these different cultures, looking everywhere else, but I was looking on the outside, not looking on the inside. And I called my uncle, and I told him, I said, "Listen, I wanna learn, what is it to be a Jew? What's the importance? Where do we come from? What meaning does this have on my life? What should I be doing according to this? How should I take this with me? What should I be giving to my children from this?" And he said, "I'll speak with my wife." And it was hard because I came from a very diverse background, and they didn't know exactly how to relate with my situation, especially in his household, and it's safe to say that I came from a different world altogether. So they came to the agreement that I can come for a month to sit and learn and take something, take what I can.
And how'd your mother take that?
She didn't take it too well at all. My mother wasn't happy with the situation. She told me, she said, listen, pack your stuff. And I told her 3 months beforehand that I want to do this. She said, pack your stuff, buy your own plane ticket. If this is what you want, do it. You're not happy here, then go. And I said, but I have 3 more months. Why do I need to pack my stuff now? She goes, oh, if you're not happy here, then why prolong the agony? And I packed my things. I asked her, where am I going to sleep? She goes, you sleep where you fall. Inside the house, of course, thank God. And slept on the floor, slept on couches, whatever. And but all my stuff was in bags, and I just washed my laundry at the laundromat, actually. She wouldn't even give me to wash it at her house. But I dealt with it.
And then you moved to your uncle.
And I did it, and I moved to my uncle's house after 3 months. I moved to my uncle's house. I got there. My first day there, I was already reading Hebrew and writing Hebrew. Thank God I learned fast, as well as my brothers. It was we came from a good background in that area. We learned that our best tool, coming from a background like ours, is our minds. And if we don't use them and utilize them and take care of them, then we'll be stuck in not the most formidable situation. As in the end of all things, I went there, and for a month I stayed, and I met with the rabbis of the school, and he saw that I was doing well, and he saw that I was reading well, and he told me, he goes, listen, we'll work something out. We take care of our own. We'll work something out.
So did you feel that your Christian and Muslim background helped you go into Judaism, understand and learn Torah?
100%. As far as in my learning, until this day in my learning, I'm always reminded of certain principles, certain ideas that I learned from these other religions, that I can relate them to this religion itself, and I can. It helps me better understand my learning. It helps me also better relate to the situations that go on outside of religion themselves, but the culture. And thank God, it definitely has given me tools to adjust and to really go into this lifestyle, especially here in Israel, which it's a different mindset, it's a different approach to everything. But I see it, I better understand, I better adjust, and it definitely helps. It definitely helps.
Today, how do you look back at these two religions?
Well, due to the tools that they've given me, and never bite the hand that feeds you, so to say. And I definitely respect these religions, because I see that there is an importance, there's something to be learned, and there is something that can help a person better understand, especially a Jew himself, better understand his position and what he has to do and how he has to relate to other people, Jews and non-Jews alike.
So how do you relate to all the hatred throughout the generations, throughout the centuries?
It eats at my heart. You want to be honest? It eats at my heart. When I read the newspapers and I hear about bombings and I see shootings, anything, or simply slander, just speaking badly about one another, it eats at my heart, because I see that the situation doesn't have to be this way. The situation can be worked out. There are things that can be done, and it's hard because I do understand to a certain level both sides of the story, what they want, the importance, and sometimes there are conflicting interests, sometimes there aren't at all, and you just don't understand because these are two different lifestyles, and a lot of it can be contributed to ignorance from what people learn in their own lifestyle but don't really understand it in the other, and it's difficult, and as I said, it eats at my heart.
You mentioned kosher food, that they related to Judaism, talked about kosher food, but more on a nationalistic level, how did Islam, when you were there, relate? How did you see them relating to Judaism?
On a nationalistic level, to be honest, in my time practicing Islam, I stayed away from those kind of, because I knew that I was Jewish myself, and I knew, so I personally, I got into the religion for a sense of the religion itself, but the ideologies and the things past that more of an interest in what I didn't really deal with. My interest, my personal interest, was getting closer to God, and in that I dealt with that, and I did the things I had to learn, and some things, yes, it did touch certain issues that were going on in the world at the time, and but I kept my mind focused. I knew, and also I had family. I didn't want to We don't have a lot of family, but the family I do have, I didn't want to relate to them in a negative manner now, because I understand that Islam says this and Judaism says this. So I stayed away from it, more or less. And today I have to deal with it, especially with my job here in the Army, and I have to deal with it a little more. But because of the time and the things I've passed and the understanding that I've developed, I deal with it with more patience, more understanding, and a better approach altogether.
So let's continue your path. What brought you from that American Jewish religious school to here, to the IDF, the military base? What brought you here?
The school itself was a Zionist school, and they were the Rabbanim at the school. They are shlichim, and they came from a program called Torah Metzion, and there we dealt a lot with Jewish thought, Jewish philosophy, Jewish culture itself, outside of the daily religious learnings that we did. And in our endeavors to understand these things and understand the importance of what people saw in Israel itself, in the land, and its importance and its role in the daily lifestyle of a Jew in Israel and outside of Israel. In addition to all this, we also saw these families coming from Israel to teach us this, because they saw the importance. Even more importantly, we saw them going back. And we constantly, so it wasn't just ideas that we were being told. It wasn't just nice things hearing about Israel and why we should be there, but we also saw people making that move to go there, that they were practicing what they were preaching. And it definitely encourages the person who's sitting and listening to this. And so too, after 12th grade, it's a norm, it's a very standard thing that a lot of people come to Israel to learn in an yeshiva or a seminary, and they learn for a year and go back. And it's their year to build a foundation for their life, their first independent year. Then they go back to university and begin that lifestyle in America and what they took from here. I came with those plans, and in the beginning I planned to come to an American yeshiva. My Rosh Yeshiva said, no, listen buddy, you're going to an Israeli yeshiva, adjust, you'll do well, I believe in you. I went with it, and I went and I adjusted. And I came to Israel and didn't speak Hebrew, I read and wrote. And there are a lot of people on that level from America who do the same thing. And I came, but I learned the language, and I was embraced by the yeshiva and the students themselves very warmly. And it was a very welcoming environment. And from there I learned, I developed very quickly, and my language skills, my culture skills, how I adapted. And it came to a point where I fell in love with not just the people, but the land itself. And everything I learned from America, and all the ideas that were being put into my head, I saw them in action. And I began to understand them. It's you had the knowledge, but now to have the understanding to see, this really is a magical place. It definitely gives something to the person.
So now you're here, after all you've gone through, you told us your story. What do you feel your role is? What do you feel that you can contribute today to the people of Israel?
One thing I learned in Israel that I take with me is a saying, lat lat, slowly slowly. So as far as what I can contribute, I lead by example, and I take the things that I learn, and take the things that I see, and for a positive manner and a negative manner, and I do the best I can to be an exemplary figure to the people around me, especially in the Army, who come from different backgrounds also to much sorrow, ignorant to certain situations, and I help them develop understanding. And even if that means sitting down one night over a bag of bamba and telling them my story a little bit, so they understand, hey, this is I came from this, and if I could do it, you could do it. And not religion, but just as far as the strength, the personal strength to adjust in the Army and make something out of your day-to-day living in their daily trials and tribulations. So right now, it's on small figures now, but God willing, who knows? People spoke with me about joining certain programs who actually deal with youth and adults also who are just come from troubled backgrounds, who are seeking something more. Maybe just telling them, I was told that my story is a very encouraging one. To tell them my story and see if I can help them out, and also through the things I've gathered and the insight I've gathered through the things I've passed throughout my life, to help them relate, help them adjust. And I thought seriously about it, and the truth of the matter is there's no greater reward than giving. and helping, and I feel that, and I truly believe that, and these aren't just words I'm saying, and so too I practice that. And so,
Sergeant Corey Bronson, thank you very much for joining us.
thank you very much, Tony. It's a pleasure.